future would be cooler. I thought the future would be cooler.
Welcome to this episode of Learning is the New Working, a podcast about the future of workplace learning, brought to you by the Learning Futures Group. Here in Season 3, we're exploring the theme of the learning scientist and searching out some learning scientists and practitioners because we believe that in charting the future of learning and development, we can learn a lot from adjacent disciplines. We're also finding practitioners around the world in the learning space who are taking a science-based approach to their work. They're hiring teams of scientists, they're using empirical practices, they're forming hypotheses, running experiments, gathering data, and sharing their findings in the broader community for feedback and review. We like this approach, and we want to learn more about it. Our conversation is with Professor Krishna Madhavan. Professor Madhavan is the director of Microsoft's Worldwide Learning Innovation Labs. The lab's a cross-functional resource that partners with many product teams across Microsoft to develop and test fundamental technologies related to learning scenarios. Prior to joining Microsoft, Krishna was at Purdue University, Indiana, in the United States, where he served as education director and analytics co-lead for the Network for Computational Nanotechnology. He was a professor of engineering education at the same institution. Krishna spent time as a visiting fellow at Microsoft Research, which proved to be his entry into joining Microsoft as an employee and co-founding the lab. In our conversation, we talk about the mission and operating model of the lab, and we also cover some other interesting topics as well, such as why the higher order questions associated with the learning process make it a useful test case for developing computational AI. We talk about the skills, strategies, and processes that he employs to drive innovation in his team. We talk about the critical importance of an ethical approach to data, computational design, and AI. We talk about the critical role of experimentation in driving innovation forward. And finally, we talk about how he thinks about the future of learning technology. Let's listen in to my conversation with Microsoft's Krishna Madhavan.
I thought the future would be cooler.
Great. So I would like to welcome Krishna Madhavan to Learning is the New Working. Hi, Krishna.
Hi, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to talk to you, and I really appreciate your time and your insights on the work that you're doing at Microsoft and what you see going on in the world. We're going to start with some quick fire questions, so not too quick, but some rapid questions to help people get a sense of the work you do and your career journey. So can we get started?
Yeah, cool. Let's go.
All right, let's do it. So I always start with a question: what part of the world do you live in, and why?
So I am based in Seattle because I work here at Microsoft. But prior to this, I was in the Midwest of the U.S. I love the Pacific Northwest. Me and my wife, both of us, have always wanted to live and work here. And so working at Microsoft gives us the opportunity to not only work for a great company, but also really live in a place that we really call home.
Great. Well, it is a special part of the world, and we're fortunate to be based here, I think. Now, you before you joined Microsoft, you had a long academic career. We'll get into your sort of career trajectory, hopefully soon. But I'm interested in what you actually studied when you went to university for the first time. What's your academic background, and what sort of bearing that has on the work that you do today?
Sure. My studies started in the field of mathematics. I have a bachelor's degree in mathematics. As I was studying for my undergrad degree, I also had a chance to really pick up a good amount of statistics and computer science along the way. So I have a variety of diplomas and so on in the field of computer science. And then my master's study was in the area of applied linguistics, where I looked at machine-based translation of text as part of my master's thesis. And in my PhD, I continued with some of that work in the area of assessment and in particular language assessment in online settings. So I helped write a spoken English exam, which was computerized and increased productivity for the test takers and learners for the very first time. So that was my PhD thesis. So it's mathematics, statistics, computer science with a good bit of language. And my PhD is granted by the Department of English because it was in the field of applied linguistics, which at Purdue happened to be in the space of liberal arts.
Oh, that's interesting. I read somewhere that you speak 6 different languages or so. Is that correct?
Yeah, I do. It's one of the fortunate things of growing up in a very multicultural environment, like India, where some of my friends would come from pretty close friends. They would speak a variety of languages. So we picked it up as kids. And then I learned German when I grew up, and I speak German quite fluently.
Interesting. So tell us what's your job title today? And what do you do on a typical day?
Yeah, so at Microsoft, I co-lead the Worldwide Learning Innovation Studio, which is tasked with imagining, designing, and productizing the next generation of learning experiences for the company. And on a typical day, our team is either in sprint mode, which is an engineering concept, as everybody knows, to really look at how we can think of a new idea in a certain problem space and how we can productize that or how we can build prototypes related to that. Of late, our work has been primarily in the area of productizing some of our ideas because we've been in existence for about a year and a half now, and we have quite a good backlog of things that we worked on over the past year and a half that we want to bring to market. So we work across the company to really build out what we call an ecosystem of learning experiences.
That's really interesting. So imagine, I think you said, imagine, design, and then productize. So take to market in one form or another innovation related to learning.
That is correct.
And do you work for a specific product group at Microsoft, at the Office division, the Azure division? Where do you sort of fit product architecture-wise?
So, yeah, that's a really great question. We are not part of a traditional product group or division. We are a real innovation studio in the sense that we are able to and empowered to by our leadership to work across multiple product groups and division. For example, we work quite closely with Office on education-related offerings. We work with LinkedIn on how we can bring the power of the economic graph to our audiences. We also work with multiple groups which are in sales, which use some of our innovations to enable better discovery of learning resources and for people who are in the sales groups. So we work across the company, and that is one of the key strengths of our group, that we are able to really collaborate, and we are encouraged and supported in that collaboration.
So I assume that gives you access to, the whole portfolio of technologies and maybe even expertise in different groups across Microsoft, as well as potential routes to market for your innovations and ideas.
Yeah, that is right. Because we are an innovation lab and innovation studio in the very traditional sense of what the studio does, we are able to leverage expertise from across the company, and people are quite happy to help. And in Microsoft right now, there is real collaboration going on across multiple groups, cross-cutting product lines, just to understand how we can make our customer experiences better. So we are highly encouraged, and we leverage expertise across multiple teams in the company.
Well, Krishna, what were your sort of career steps to get you into this amazing job in the first place? Sounds like you spent a lot of time in academia before, but how did you get to where you are today?
So even though I was in academia, I was a tenured professor of engineering at Purdue. But as I was a professor, I used to work quite closely with many companies across the world. I have received research and product grants from companies like Boeing. I was a researcher at Microsoft where I worked on Azure and some of the search-related concepts. So I've been working with productization of ideas for a very long time, and I've also had a chance to work with many arms of the federal government over the past several years when I was an academic. But during one of those journeys, when I was here at Microsoft, I was an Azure for Research awardee, and I was here at MSR working through some of the products. And it dawned on me that it would be a great use of my skills if I were to be in a very product-oriented environment like Microsoft, because I can bring academic rigor into the industry. So that was my journey. So I started out in academia. I went through all the regular processes of becoming a tenured faculty member there. I was a career award winner from the National Science Foundation, which is one of the top awards given to researchers who are early in their careers for enabling innovations in engineering and science. And then through that, I worked with multiple companies, and then I landed at Microsoft as one of the engineering leads.
Amazing, amazing, and good luck for Microsoft. I think I think you've been at Microsoft a couple of years. Am I correct?
Yes, I have. I've gone through 2 years.
Great.
Now.
Well, congratulations on that. And I wonder if you could share any observations you have. So, I mean, sort of leaving a sort of tenured faculty position at a great school and then moving into industry. Any observations that you have on the two cultures and what they could learn from each other?
Yeah, academia in general traditionally has been very much into fundamental research and not so much into productizing and commercialization of ideas. Nowadays, universities are very much aware that there is a huge opportunity for them to commercialize their work. And at Purdue, where I came from, this was highly encouraged. We got a lot of training to do that. We were assigned mentors. We went through training programs and so on. However, in academia, the focus almost always tends to be on fundamental research. How do we move the state of the science or state of engineering forward? I find that in the industry, there is a lot more application-oriented work where we are able to take some of those fundamental ideas and then move them into product domains. One classic example of this would be that in the whole area of artificial intelligence, there is a lot of fundamental work that has happened over the last several years, even when people were saying things like neural nets are not going to be big. Over the 80s and 90s, there were people who persevered through that, and this year's Turing Award winners are classic examples of that. And now you see that a lot of the fundamental work is being commercialized into AI products and services. So the difference between academia and industry is timescales and also the agility with which things happen. So those are very fundamental to work cultures. Academia is slow and deliberate in many ways, purposefully so, but that is changing a lot, and industry is super agile and tends to move very, very fast and is at the very cutting edge of bringing things to market.
At the same time, I'm seeing a lot of industries, particularly in the learning space and in the learning development space, where many of our listeners operate, increasingly looking to academia and science for kind of models. I know we're going to talk about experimentation, for example, later on in this conversation, but I think industry is looking to academia more and more for approaches, particularly in the area of innovation when you're doing things at scale. There seems to be a flow in that direction as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Academia has over the years not only done a lot of work to understand how people learn and how people work, but they've also done a lot of work to validate some of those assumptions. And so this is exactly where the strength of academia is in terms of creating a wealth of knowledge that can be leveraged for the betterment of humanity. And that is a very natural alliance that has been happening over the last several decades, but now is in real full force because of the nature of the disruptions that are coming into the market.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's worth just sort of pointing out here and sort of setting the scene. Our audience is typically practitioners in learning and development departments. Our thesis here is that in the future, with all the change that's coming to the world of work, those people need kind of new models and new approaches to help their employees and prospective employees be really successful. And the whole idea of learning is the new working says that creating environments and helping people be effective learners is going to be essential in order to respond to the changes coming to the workplace. And in this series in particular that this conversation is part of, we're really interested in exploring how different science disciplines, whether it's neuroscience or in your case, computer science and engineering, how they can help us, how there are models and things that we can learn from those disciplines that will help us get better at doing this very important task. So I thought in a prior conversation, you said something really interesting to me that will sort of turn our attention here a little bit to learning as the topic. You'd mentioned that you thought that learning was the new product